Hello guys, Nigel here, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and no, you are not seeing things. This is the Kitty Hawk 1/32 scale OV-10 AC Bronco back on the bench, and I haven't touched this thing for a year. Yes, the last video I put up with this, part 6, July 19, and here we are now July 20. So I've had a few people ask for this, and I've had a lot of people ask for two other kits, which I have done work on or shown. So my plan today is Sunday the 5th of July 2020. My plan is today is to get this video and two other videos up, as well as the Sherman video I've already done. So I'm really going for it. And this video and the other two videos are going to be historical. So they're going to be dragging up kits which I've shown you in the past and worked on in the past and bringing them back to life. So, and also now without music. I remember some of my early videos, there I am mumbling away, talking very quietly. And in the background there's music playing. This is drowning me out and you can't hear me even without the music. So, don't know what I was thinking of. Anyway, times have moved on. So, what did I buy for this kit? I got Edard photo etch for it, as I've shown you already. I print out the instructions on A4 paper. I've also got the beautiful Aircraft brass undercarriage legs, which I've done a review on. And I've got those. They are here in the box somewhere, in a bag. Where have they gone? They were in this box in there. I thought they were in there. So there they are. There's the beautiful Aircraft undercarriage there, which is a vast improvement over the kit parts because the legs are slimmed down, so they're more accurate to scale. Also, there's a pivot which goes under here. If you remember, I showed you, and on the kit it's the wrong way round. So it's what they've done is with Aircraft, they've actually turned it 90 degrees, so it's correct. So that's good. And also, I have some aftermarket decals for it. Where were they? They're here, well prepared as per usual. Oh, come on. Got these aftermarket decal stencils for it, so they should be adding to it as well, which will be nice to see. So the reason I've got this out is because I need to start looking at the cockpit, because I want to get these cockpit halves together if I can and get these attached, because if you remember, the whole objective of this was to get the main airframe built, get everything square and set up beautifully, and then from there we could go on and make a beautiful model. No point adding all the lovely cockpit detail and all working undercarriage bays and engines and everything if you end up with a kit which sits like this and, you know, it's over and twisted and everything. But as you can see, I've done absolutely nothing to it since my last video, which, as I say, was part 6 back in 2019. And I ended up with that video by putting a rubber band there to pinch these together, just to show that when it came together it didn't all pull it out of shape. So there we go. If you are new to this, I did some work. I cut the rudders off because basically when you looked at the kit, which is, this is left, so this is left here. When you looked at the kit, every control surface on it is actually, all the ailerons, all the flaps, everything are basically separate items, but the rudders were actually moulded in. So I cut them off and did some work to make them you know, a feature so that I could have them slightly off or whatever, just like so. So that was some work I did there. Go back in the previous videos and you'll see that. Maybe I've got a playlist of this, I don't know. If I haven't, I'll probably make one up. So looking in the instructions, which are down here, and we don't follow the instructions at all. If you watch this back from part 1, you'll see I've completely ignored the instructions because the build sequence that was planned in this kit was just dire. If Kitty Hawk are watching, if you want me to come and plan your builds for you, I will. But yeah, the way they planned this out to build it, you know, adding this centre spar onto the cockpit and then building up your outer wings and adding them on as a separate part was just it's never going to work. Here, building up the spars with the undercarriage and everything, and then adding them to the wings. Okay, doing the same there on the other side, and then bringing it all together like this when there was absolutely no location between these two parts whatsoever. These are just literally butt jointed, and you can see that I've actually added plastic card in there to give them some sort of overlap. And you can see that here I've got these are the parts that would be glued up against the fuselage. So basically, if you followed the instructions, you would have this, okay, with that glued there, all right, and then you'd have to butt the wing up onto that, and all you've got to fit that is just this edge of this engine here to butt up against there. And if you look, I've left part of this. Which part of it have I left unglued? Oh, we go. I've left this part here unglued to allow movement. But yeah, if this is your first time and you are interested in building this kit and you want to follow my building sequence up to this point, go back through my catalogue or look at the playlist, and you'll see that it's very explanatory and kind of almost, I've done it sort of for somebody who's the first time ever, you know, cutting up one of their kits or whatever. So yeah, have a look at that, and I think you'll enjoy it. But you can see we've got a piece of brass rod in here, which is basically giving the whole thing some strength. And you can see we've got some photo etch parts added in here. We've got some spars and a box and some bits and pieces in there. And there's an access panel in the bottom of there as well. So as I say, go back and have a look. Now what I'm looking at now is if I could get this fuselage halves together and have them glued to the fuselage, to the wing section, and then put all this in after. That's what I'm looking at. Now, the nose section in this kit is a separate piece because obviously there's the D version as well, which has got the different nose. And basically this goes on here. Now I've taken these off the sprues, cleaned off all the sprue nibs, and I've also gone in with a knife and scraped out this this flange here, just to make it a bit thinner, to get a better fit, so that because the parts before they were kind of exaggerated, they were like this, it was holding it away. So I've removed some material to allow me to get in there. And basically what we want to do is put this down on the bench flat like so, and hold this flat and have it glued in like that, so it's all in together. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I'm also looking now that I may leave the nose off, and then I'll be able to just slide all the cockpit and everything in. Now the cockpit is here, and basically the only location is these two tabs here that go into these slots in here. So I should be able to slide it all in and drop it down in, but then the detail in the sides will suffer. So I'm kind of don't know what to do, and I'm doing this with you because I want you to enjoy it with me. It's no good me just coming along and saying this is what I've done, this is why. You know, we can have this thought process together. You can see there's a lot of cutting around to do in the cockpit. We've got to remove this part here, we've got to remove this part over here, and then add photo etch panels in there. So we'll be adding some plastic card in there to give them something to work with. But I think actually getting this fuselage together into the airframe and having it basically as one, and then slotting the cockpit in, I don't think it's going to happen, because we've got photo etch parts going in here in the side walls. In here there's some parts going in here, we'll obviously knock them off, and then all this photo etch in here will all get pushed around as well. So I think that's going to be a no-brainer to start with. We've got some ejector pin marks here, some square ones you can see, and part of this area I believe is going to be visible when we look in through the glazing at the top. Oh no, it won't, because we've got that there, that bulkhead. So I think what I'll do is get the parts off the sprues, and we'll look at actually these parts here, and we'll look at actually just taping it up or mocking it up somehow, perhaps a tiny drop of super glue, mocking it up and getting it so that we can see what we're doing. Right, now I've got these parts held together in my hands because if I let them go, they'll never go together again. Basically there are no location pins, tabs, flanges, anything on any of this, so God only knows how you're supposed to get it together. What is nice, you've got floor detail in here and you've got roof detail up there, so if you wanted to display your model with the back door open, you can, because I used to put all sorts of stuff in there, even people apparently. I can't remember the name of the video now, but if you look around, if you search for this aircraft, there is a walk around of a couple of these in a museum, in an outdoor museum at in America, and they're speaking with one of the original pilots, and he talks about the contra-rotating propellers and stuff. If one engine cuts, it would flip the aircraft over, and the stuff they used to carry and some of the things they used to get up to. And very interesting video if you're into this aircraft. I'm very much into the Cessna twin boom, the OV-10, and then you've got the Bird Dog as well. But unfortunately those kits are made by Roden, and they're, Yeah, I see that ICM are just doing a 1/48 scale version of the twin boom one, which I think is called the OV-10. Hopefully they'll follow up with the 32nd scale, because the Rodin one is yeah, not very good. So basically that just comes apart like that, and you can see that this here, it basically shows you in the instructions that what you do is you put the cockpit floor, you go, that bit goes in there, so that goes in there, but where does it go? There is nowhere, there is no line, no location or anything for it, but it looks like it does go in with these two lugs up against those corners, which is all well and good, but we're going to be cutting these pieces out to fit our Edard photo etch. So what I need to do here is basically clamp this together somehow, or hold it together and put something in to actually give it a step. So I'll put a piece of strip across the bottom here, and then I'll be able to that'll give me something to locate up against once all that the plastic here is removed. So that'll be something worth doing. Yeah, I may even put some tabs down here to get the angle, because once all this is gone there'll be nothing to determine that angle, because there's nothing in the, usually you would get a couple of slots or a couple of pegs in the fuselage to determine the angle that goes at, but there's nothing. And then likewise this floor goes in, sort of slots underneath those ribs and sits there, but there's nothing else to locate it. So you kind of put this in, well, you put the cockpit in those slot in there, and then you kind of slot this in behind it and sort of hope for the best, really. And then this top piece kind of sits, there's a step, and it kind of sits in there like that. So all you're going to see through the top is the radio gear, which sits on top of this mess here. But I've removed the ejector pin marks. He says I've almost removed the ejector pin marks. So yeah, so I need to make up something to hold that in there. So let me get some plastic strip going, and then I'll come back. Okay, so a little bit better for you. Basically, what I've done, I've stuck the rear bulkhead onto the back of the cockpit floor there, and as you can see, we've got these little square tabs firmly up in those corners, and then I've just made up some plastic wedges, so they go against the bottom of the floor, so that's going to determine the angle for me once all this has been removed, because if you remember, we've got to remove all of that plastic to fit in the photo etch parts. So that's that done, and then I've put like a buttress at the bottom, just a piece of C-section that to butt up against to give it a nice firm location. So that will fit into the fuselage like so. So that will go like that, and then the rest of the parts will all fit accordingly. This panel here there's a step in the top of there, and that there's a cutout, like an angled face on the front of there, and that fits in the back of there beautifully. So that goes like that, and then the floor goes in like so without the roof falling down on you. The floor goes in like that, and it's actually, you know, people talk about Kitty Hawk and the fit and everything. I find the fit in this kit is incredibly good. Incredibly good. I mean, it really is. And we look at the fit of that just sits in there. It wants to fall under its own weight, but it's just sitting in there on top of those ribs. There's no ejector pin marks in the way. Everything fits square straight away. You know, it's it really is nice to work with. So there we go. Now I may be tempted to glue all this to that bulkhead going forward. We'll see. But basically I wanted to get that done. So now what I need to do is take this blue tack away, keep the rear bulkhead in position, and then just pull that away from there. We've probably got a tiny little bit of glue hold that's weeped through, but basically you can see that's in there now. And now that we've got it away from the rest of the model, we can get in here with some extra thin and make sure we get a good weld action going on in there. And there we are. So that's our positive location now. The width is obviously controlled by you know, where the edges of the cockpit come. So basically, once we remove the plastic and replace it with photo etch, we'll just make the photo etch come out to there. In fact, looking at it, what I may do is actually give it some location, because actually thinking about it, once that photo etch is on, we won't have any control there. So I think I will give it some location. But now that I've put all that glue on there, it's starting to tack into place. So that actually wouldn't be a bad thing. If I just let it sit there, it will break away easily. So I'm just going to go on and put some plastic card in here to give it a side-to-side location as well, I think. And what I'll do, I will get a couple of little pieces. What else have we got in here which is thick? This is my bin of scrap card. So I'll just take a piece off the end of there, and then I'll take a piece like that and a piece like that. And then what I'm going to do is put some glue there. Glue that in there. And I'm going to put some glue there. Pick that up with a knife. Just put that in there, and that's giving us side-to-side location as well now. Obviously appearance isn't an issue because no one's ever going to see it. It's going underneath the car park cockpit within the fuselage halves. The pilot sits in the car park. So there we go. Now that has glued itself on. So we can once again now come in with the extra thin, get some in there, make sure they're properly welded in, and there we are. Job done. So we've remodeled that now so that we can actually safely cut all this away and fit our photo etch at a later date. That all fits beautifully. Right, this is what's called planning ahead. Thinking about where you're going, thinking about what you're going to do, thinking about the model, how it's going to come together, and actually, you know, trying to avoid coming unstuck. I've never built one of these before. In fact, I've never built a Kitty Hawk kit before. But basically, this is what it's all about, and thinking about, you know, how you're going to build it, how you're going to ensure it goes together, just making life easier for yourself. Because as I say, the fit of these parts is absolutely superb. So why make life hard for yourself? One little tip if you're building this, I've just noticed this here. We've got like there's a raised oblong area there where you've got this step or whatever it is on the outside. But here, you've got this ejector pin mark, which is getting in the way of that bulkhead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a block of some sort. In fact, I'll put it on a fine sanding stick so I don't break. If I push down on there, you see it's going to snap that part off there. So I'm just going to place that on a sanding stick, and then I can come along with a modelling knife and just cut that down like so and shave that out. I need to get a new blade in here. This is when you start to cut yourself when you've got a blunt blade. So just removing that from there should make life a lot easier for us. I'll just scrape the top of it away, just because. And I'm just going to take some of that corner away from there because I've got a feeling maybe that's getting in the way as well. There we go. So I think now, with that fitted into the back end of the cockpit, where's my blue tack? Let's get that blue tack lump back again. It's quite cold, it needs to be warmed up. So we'll get that up in there like that. So it's held together. You can see all our added plastic cards doing its job, and then we can slot that tab down in that groove, and you can see now that it fits. You can see that ejector pin mark was in the way, so it fits in there a lot nicer now. As I say, this is like, you know, with model kit building, if something's not going right, it's normally something you're doing wrong. So what I'm tempted to do now is glue all this floor assembly to this rear bulkhead with the fuselage halves held together. And then that will be an assembly that can go in there and support this fuselage, so I know that I'm getting the fuselage halves set at the right distance apart for fitting in those little fillets, because basically this is going to go in there like so, and I want to make sure I've got the right distance in here. I don't want to end up with massive gaps everywhere or having it all not fit together. So basically I think what I'm going to do is, with those fuselage halves held together like so, in fact I think we'll get some Tamiya tape on them. I've got a load of new masking tapes which have been sent to me by Ed at Premium Hobbies. We've got to try those out. But for actual modelling and stuff, I'm just going to carry on using these Tamiya tapes until they run out. Okay, so that's that held together like that, and I think I'll put a piece over the top as well. Okay, so that floor is in there. The edges are clipped in under those vertical ribs. Now we're not gluing the fuselage together or anything, and we're not gluing the bulkheads to the fuselage. But what I want to do is get some extra thin down in that joint. I can't get the brush down in there. I'm going to have to get a paintbrush. There we go. So I'm just going to get a paintbrush with some glue on and put some down in there. And then that can do its thing and weld into the back of that bulkhead. And I'm actually thinking what I might do is take a piece of plastic strip. Okay, so that's that one there. I've put a piece of plastic strip in there. I'm not going to be having the rear door open, so I'm not really worried about the inside of here. So basically I'm going for strength over appearance. So I just put a piece of plastic strip in there just to give it a bit of a visual. And then what we're going to do then is put this top piece in where the radio sits, and the reason is you've got all this lovely rivet detail on here, okay, because if you have the back open, this is the roof. This here will be underneath the wing. It'll be under there, sort of like that, so you're not going to see it anyway. So that's why it's like that. It's not been moulded backwards or something. So that's going to clip into there. Wow, this is such a good fit. It's asking me to push the top of the bulkhead forward, which obviously before was being done by that ejector pin. So there we go. So now that roof's in there. So we've got the floor butted up against that rib at the bottom, and the roof is butted up at the rib at the top. It's all extremely nice. So we can put some extra thin in here, like that. So that's that all glued together. Very nicely indeed. Very, very nicely indeed. So now we'll have that's a very, very strong solid box now that will go up under here and sit in just like that. And we can get our correct distances for our wings and everything then. So we can basically take this into place, blue tack it in place, tack it in with a bit of super glue, work on the bottoms of the wings, get all that done, and then this will come out and we can build this as a separate assembly and then pop it up in afterwards. So the other thing I want to do now is put something in here between the top and bottom to give it some strength, but I think I'll let the glue go off a bit first before I do that. Maybe I'll put a piece of plastic tubing in there or something, just something there to give it strength when it's all taken apart, basically. Because I want to build this onto the cockpit and then put the whole assembly in the fuselage halves, close the fuselage halves together, and then we'll be done. So this nose section should fit lovely around that cockpit. Just check, and yes it does. And then our other nose part's going to go in here. For some reason we've got fouling. That piece there is fouling, obviously needs to be carved off. Or the front of the cockpit needs to go down. I think the latter being the case. Yeah, and then that side's going to fit. It's going to all go together lovely, I'm sure. I'm very sure. If the fit of the rest of this kit is anything to go by, this will all go together beautifully. So it's quite a big old model, this, you can imagine, when this is on here under there like that. And then we get our nose section on, like so. You can see it's a big old bird. It's this is an A3 modelling. It's basically the length of a piece of A3 paper. It's a big old model. So I'm going to let that go off, and then I'm going to put something in there. Okay, so there we go. So I've got that now. I've put a couple of strips in there, just in case I do decide to have the back open at some point. Then it kind of looks like it's just stiffening ribs. So basically there we go, that's the back end all together. I've put a piece of plastic strip in there as well, as you can see, as I've done on the bottom. So that should all hold together nicely now. So now we've got our rear end as a separate little sub assembly. I'm just going to put a drop of extra thin on here, because obviously I made it quite a dry joint so that it didn't stick to the fuselage. So that can just sit now like that, and that can dry on its own. We can take the blue tack off of the cockpit and we can basically leave it at that. So these nose sections are going to fit now. So they are a very nice fit. I'm just going to take some off the back of this flange to let it go back in a bit deeper. There we go, that's better. That is a really nice fit. So what I'm going to do is somehow try and get this in without any glue oozing out, which is going to be easier said than done. So I'm going to have to tack it, let the glue go tacky, and then we should be able to get it to stay there, hold together without glue oozing out. Then put this down on the bench, hold it square, make sure that nose is square around the front area. And then what we can do is come along with our extra thin, brush it in there, good old thick lot of it, don't push it together. I've got a bit too much there, I'm just going to wick that up with a cotton bud and then put it down on the bench and just leave it, let that dry. Do the same on this one. Again, I'm going to sand a touch off the back of there just to slightly improve that fit. It almost feels like it's got a bit of an edge on there. Okay, what we'll do is after we put some Mr. Surfacer in there, I'm not sure if there's a panel line there or not, but if there is, I'll do this one slightly differently. What I'm going to do is hold it together and put the glue in. But if there is a panel line there, we'll put some Mr. Surfacer in there, then remove the excess with thinners. And if there isn't a panel line there, then we'll just fill it. Now, I'm not happy about the way that's fitting in the bottom there. Something is wrong. It's not looking as good now as it did when I dry fitted it. So let's just sand some of that away and see what happens. That's better. And if you are building a model like this, guys, it's always better to do it in halves like this, rather than glue it together, glue the nose pieces together and then try and put it together as one long assembly. That won't work, you see, because I've got a problem there now where I was misaligned. It's something to do with this area down here. It's not fitting well at all. So I can hold that and let that set in that shape. And I think probably the best thing to do at this stage would be to take these fuselage halves together. In fact, we'll put all of this in here. That's going to slot in there like so. You can see a bit of pre-assembly, how much easier everything fits. That's just going to slot in there, and then that's just going to slot in there like that, and that's all going to stay on its own. And then we can put the halves together. I removed the pins, the assembly pins from the fuselage halves, because I wanted to be able to hold them flat to get these nose sections together. So what I'm going to do is take these fuselage sections back together. And then bit of tape on the nose. And then we could just let that dry like that. And I'm just going to brush a little drop more extra thin just to make sure it has actually gone together. And we can see here on this side, this panel line aligns perfectly, and I'm going to do the same on the other side, because I would rather have to sand an edge to get a match somewhere than have to sand or rescribe a panel line and rivet everything. I would rather blend that there than try and correct that panel line. That's what I'm saying. I've actually got a mould seam here running along there, I've only just noticed, so that's going to affect things as well. That's going to need some careful sanding because we've got that round raised disc there. Hopefully that's replaced in the Edard photo etch, and then we can just sand that off. So I want to make sure this is absolutely solid, this joint. We don't want any cracking or anything. If I just take a hard edge and just check nice and flush. Panel lines line up beautifully. There we go. That's our nose section in and all done. Ready for the next step. So just to give you an idea of how big the old bird is, there we go. She's a big old lump. Right, so we'll call that a day for this part. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been fairly long, and as I said, I'm going to try and get another 2 videos done today, and it's already like 7 o'clock at night, so we'll see how we get on. I'll at least get one done. So thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon for part 8. This has been part 7. I need to get my head back around where we are with this and where we're going, and perhaps watch my other videos through again so that I know what it is I'm doing. So I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.